got some new fan art for you. So I've talked about some of this before, but I feel like I should devote an entire video to Jehovah's Witnesses and where they get their money, what kinds of crooked things they do with it. There's a lot to dissect here, so let's just start from the beginning. Let's get into it. So here's how it works. Most of their money comes from three places: property sales, stocks, and donations. Here's what happens with the donations. They're a little different than a lot of other churches in the sense that they don't pass around a collection plate or anything. They just have a donation box somewhere near the literature counter in every Kingdom Hall. People are encouraged to give 10% of their monthly income to it, but they aren't heavily pressured or guilted on a personal basis. You just drop what you can into the donation box. Then the presiding overseer deposits it into the Kingdom Hall's bank account, and they go to this website and transfer the money from their account to the Watchtower Society's account. The website, card processing, and everything else is all run by the Watchtower Society. That's for typical donations, not for all donations. So in most cases, transaction fees actually go to them. So they're actually making money off of the transaction too. But like I said, that's really not a big percentage of where the money comes from. We'll get into that in a second. As I was saying, Jehovah's Witnesses don't really push people to donate as much as with other religions. With Mormons, you have to pay 10% of your monthly income to the church. The deacon or bishop or whoever it is will come around and ask you point blank if you settled up and paid your 10%. He'll look at your tithing record for the year and decide if he thinks you're actually making that much, based on what you're driving and wearing and where you're living. That kind of thing. Super invasive. Even the kids in Mormonism have to give 10% of their allowance. They have fast offerings too, where you're supposed to skip 2 meals on Sundays and give the church the money you saved by skipping that food. They're almost literally taking the food right out of your mouth. Jehovah's Witnesses are a little more subtle about their corruption. Not to mention that Jehovah's Witnesses encourage their people not to go to college or get good jobs. So if Jehovah's Witnesses aren't really making a ton of money from their members' donations, where's all the money coming from? We'll get to it. Now let's talk about stocks. I took a screenshot of the charitable planning stuff on their website. Here's what it says. In addition to gifts of money and valuable personal property, there are other ways to benefit Kingdom service worldwide. These are listed below. Insurance and retirement plans. A donation made by specifying an entity used by Jehovah's Witnesses as the beneficiary of a life insurance policy, individual retirement account, or a retirement pension plan. Bank accounts. Bank accounts may be made payable on death to an entity used by Jehovah's Witnesses in accord with local bank requirements. Stocks and bonds. Stocks and bonds donated to an entity used by Jehovah's Witnesses as an outright gift or by means of a written agreement to transfer on death. Real estate. Saleable real estate donated to an entity used by Jehovah's Witnesses, either by making an outright gift or, in the case of residential property, by reserving a life estate to the donor, who can continue to live in the residence during his or her lifetime. Wills and trusts. Property or money may be bequeathed to an entity used by Jehovah's Witnesses by means of a legally executed will or by specifying the entity as the beneficiary of a trust agreement. This agreement may provide certain tax advantages. So basically they're saying that people can deed their houses to the Watchtower Society, or their stocks and bonds, or whatever else. Well, here's the interesting bit. There was a trust gifted to the Watchtower Society long ago, something called the H.M. Riley Trust, and it had some very specific holdings. It held stock in Philip Morris, the cigarette company that makes Marlboro cigarettes. Not only that, but it held stocks in oil and gas refineries and other things. Now, I understand that the Watchtower Society might not have had access to change or control which stocks were held by this trust that was gifted to them. Maybe they did, maybe they didn't. I don't know. But what I do know is that the Watchtower Society orders its people to be so righteous, some were beaten to death for not saying the Pledge of Allegiance when it was a legal requirement. Some were placed in concentration camps when they were told they absolutely can't deny their faith, even in the face of certain death, even to protect their own lives and continue on to worship anyways. The Watchtower Society was aware of what was about to happen when they gave those orders to people. They knew they were ordering people to their deaths in some cases. They knew they were ordering people to their deaths when they ordered them not to take blood transfusions, when they gave them medical directives to carry around in their wallets and instructed them to sign it, when they told parents to supply their children with those medical directives and sign it in their place as their legal guardians. I carried one of those around when I was a kid. They knew what was going to happen when they passed those orders down, and they did it anyway. anyways. The members have been told to lie to and bribe government officials so they could avoid military service. They're told to do absolutely anything in the service of God. If you die, so be it. You'll be resurrected in the end. And that is why I feel like the argument that the Watchtower Society couldn't control what this trust invested is flimsy at best. If they're truly God's people, if they're truly as righteous as they order people to be, they would get rid of the trust. The argument that they didn't know or couldn't control it is a type of argument that somebody from the outside would give. Somebody who doesn't understand the mindset that the Watchtower Society imposes on people. I don't buy it. Everybody has access to public records. In fact, here they are. If regular Jehovah's Witnesses are expected to switch the radio off when a Christmas song comes on, or not buy a wreath during Christmas because they don't want to give somebody the wrong impression, or if the males are expected to never be alone in a room with a female, or if they're expected to physically cover their ears when they're in the presence of an apostate so Satan's influence doesn't creep in, or if they're told never to buy cigarettes, even for a worldly grandparent or something, because you could stumble somebody if they saw you buying them. I'm not gonna buy this bullshit excuse that they couldn't control the trust. Get rid of the fucking thing if you can't control it, and it means you're getting a share of a cigarette company's profits, while you force people's families to mourn for them like they're dead because they tried a cigarette. It's the same thing with UN membership. I don't care what bullshit excuse they give. I understand that it seems like a small thing. It seems insignificant. But if you understood the mindset that the Watchtower Society breeds, it wouldn't seem so insignificant anymore. People literally being ordered to their death through protest or refusing to follow government laws, or through a lack of blood transfusions. Men, women, and children dying every day. And here the Watchtower Society stands, agreeing to the mission statement to the UN and signing up to be part of it while telling their people that it's the great beast spoken of in the book of Revelation. What's their excuse? They said they wanted to use the UN libraries, when the same books could be found in depositories within a few miles of those official UN libraries. I'm not going to give them a break on this or on the H.M. Riley Trust. They don't give their people a break on buying wreaths during Christmas time. I'm not giving them a break on earning money from Marlboro cigarette sales, or being a member of the organization they call the Great Beast. Okay, I totally got off on an unrelated tangent for a second there. So the point here is that they make money from stocks, which they should be watching closely to ensure those companies are at least a little in line with their moral values. Like, the companies associated with those stocks don't even have to be run by Jehovah's Witnesses. I won't require that of them. But they can't rip families apart over smoking cigarettes and then benefit from cigarette sales. That is too hypocritical for me. Anyways, on to the final bit about how they make money. This one is a little convoluted, and I'm kind of impressed by their plan. It, at the very least, shows that they aren't completely incompetent. But of course, they're throwing their weight around and ruining people's lives in the process. So as smart as this next master plan of theirs is, it's still f***ed up and they should still be called out for it. That's what I'm here for. So here's what the Watchtower Society came to realize a few years ago. They realized that they have a bunch of people who are devoted to the core and willing to do anything they ask. So they started pushing this whole bit about how in the new system we're going to need people to build houses and run plumbing and stuff. We aren't going to need doctors or lawyers. That stuff is a waste of your life. Don't bother going to college. Go to trade school. So they got people to go to trade schools to learn carpentry and welding and plumbing and all that stuff. Don't get me wrong, those are fine occupations, and I respect the people who do that work. But I know an awful lot of people who are very upset that they fell for the Watchtower Society's position on college. They feel cheated now, rightfully so. Some people love doing carpentry. Some people love doing plumbing. But some people love thinking. Some people love solving math equations. Some people love architecting software from the ground up. Some love psychology, and those people will never know their true ambitions in those fields because the Watchtower Society told them to do carpentry instead. Now what they have is a bunch of skilled blue-collar workers who can build a house in like a day. So they capitalize on that. They got their skilled blue-collar workers to build their headquarters in Wallkill, New York, for free, aside from building materials. They do the same thing with kingdom halls. In many cases, the property on which the kingdom halls were built was gifted to them. The building materials were paid for by the members of the congregation who are going to occupy the kingdom hall, or wealthy donors. Proportionally, building materials really aren't that expensive. The expensive bit comes from labor and other things. Sometimes the materials are paid for by the Watchtower Society, but they're still getting free labor out of the whole deal. So when the time comes to build a new kingdom hall, everybody in the congregation, say 100 people, come to the property on a weekend weekend, and by the end of the week, the paint is drying on the brand new walls. There's a massive profit margin because of the free labor. Of course, we know the Watchtower Society's been hemorrhaging money lately, so they started liquidating. They came up with what they called the master plan. They started sharing kingdom halls between congregations and assigning people to different halls. They noticed that if a kingdom hall could seat, say, 300 people, and the congregation had 300 people assigned, but only 220 show up, they could move 80 regulars from another kingdom hall into the first one to max out seating. They could do that with every kingdom hall in the country to maximize attendance and minimize empty chairs. Airlines do that kind of thing all the time. It's called overbooking. They see that on average, say 20% of the people on the flight from Sydney to Dallas don't show up or cancel the flight for some other reason. So they'll sell 15% more tickets and end up with a full plane. When everybody shows up though, that's when it becomes a problem for the airlines. You have to refund tickets and put them on another plane, and it can cause big problems. Sometimes it leads to people involuntarily being dragged off planes. Anyways, I'm getting sidetracked again. As I was saying about the Watchtower Society, after overbooking their kingdom halls, they find themselves with an empty kingdom hall. Then they sell it off to make a ton of money from the sale. It's honestly a smart way to do it. The problem is that they're moving people into other congregations without regard for friendships or families. They don't care who goes where ultimately, because if they split friends or families up, it just means they have to lean more heavily on the congregation and on quote-unquote Jehovah, aka the Watchtower Society. I understand that the people at the very top, the leadership, couldn't possibly know what kind of relations or friendships people have. But they could tell the elders, we need 80 people moved from this congregation to that one. And the elders, the people who are in close proximity to these people every day, the people who know what relationships and friendships there are, could work with the people to decide who goes where. Instead, it looks like the Watchtower Society is just providing a list of people to the elders and telling them where they want them to go. And they're putting out propaganda pieces to reinforce it. Check this one out.
Let's just say some struggled with the idea.
Paula, did you see? They have us going to the South congregation and everybody else from our group is going to North.
Yeah, I saw that. My aunt and cousins will be going there too.
Well, that doesn't make any sense. They should keep you together. Well, at least the brothers said that the list was just a recommendation.
Well, they didn't say it exactly like that. They said if we had extenuating circumstances.
So you don't have to go if you don't want to go.
But Kim, if everyone did that, don't you think...
Hi, Sister Taylor.
Oh, hello, girls.
I saw your name on the list for the South congregation, but your grandkids and their families, they're going to North. So what are you going to do?
What do you mean?
Well, are you going to North or are you going to South?
Now, sweetie, didn't you say you saw my name listed under the South congregation?
Yeah, but...
So, I'll be going to the South congregation.
Well, don't you think it would make more sense if you were in the same congregation as your grandkids and their families?
Does it make more sense? Well, that's a whole different question. The brothers outlined an arrangement. They said they hoped we could support that arrangement, unless we had extenuating circumstances, and I don't have any right now. So, for me, it's simple. Whether I think it makes sense or not, I'm going to support that arrangement. Oh, look, girls, I've got to go. Oh, and by the way, I hope to see you both in the South congregation.
So much to dissect. I will contain myself. But FYI, I've already done a rebuttal to this video. It's in the card in the corner if you want to check that out. So there are exemptions, but they don't happen often. And they made it clear that you're splitting up my family isn't a valid reason for an exemption. From my understanding, it takes some real convincing to be granted an exemption in the first place. Most of the time, the kingdom halls are being sold off anyway, so there is no exemption from moving. But there might be one for moving to one hall instead of another. As I said though, they're very uncommon and the Watchtower Society is really pushing this obedience bit. So they got these kingdom halls for next to nothing, and now they're liquidating them for a clean profit. They're putting the one set of skills their members have to use. building. That's where their money comes from. And if they need more money, they can have congregations of people build new kingdom halls and then sell off the older ones. Now there's one more thing I wanted to touch on, and that's the headquarters, Bethel. As I mentioned earlier, they had property in Brooklyn, Wallkill, and a bunch of other locations. They just closed one of them and sold it off for a ton of money, then had their slave labor build a new headquarters in Warwick. They are what essentially amounts to cult compounds. In fact, that's exactly what they are. They're compounds. They're closed off to the public outside of special tours of a public-facing portion of the facilities. Only the best of the best, the most spiritual of the most spiritual, make it to Bethel to live on the compound and work for the Watchtower Society among the leaders. They have maids who come in and clean the rooms, and you have no right to privacy. The maids have the right to go through everything you own if they want, and report it to the leadership if they find something questionable, like, for example, certain books, certain movies, or magazines. I was going to list certain games, but you really don't have time to play games. It's heavily discouraged at best in Bethel, and in some cases outright banned. Your job is to serve the Watchtower Society when you're there, and people spend their entire lives there sometimes. Literally 40, 50 years. You live and breathe Watchtower Society. It's a lot like the military in the way your schedule is carefully regimented. Not to mention the fact that they just kick your ass out on the street when you're too old to work. No retirement plan, no skills you can use in the real world, no nothing. They just tell them to go home to their families when they can't work anymore. No freeloaders. And what do? They can't get a job. They're too fucking old. They live off of Social Security and hope that the family they left behind 30 years earlier is still Jehovah's Witness and is still willing to accept them into their homes. I don't think I've ever pointed out that Bethel is the cult compound of the Jehovah's Witnesses before, and that's because I didn't really realize it until recently, because I grew up viewing it as this fantastic place to which everybody wanted to go. But that's exactly what it is. It's a compound that's designed to pump out propaganda. They have a writing staff for their literature, a graphics design staff for their Caleb and Sophia videos, an engineering staff for their app and website, the whole 9 yards. They even send people to law school to work for them as their lawyers. It's very interesting, and it probably deserves closer examination at some point. But for the moment, we'll leave it at that. Before moving on, there is one more thing I want to mention about it. I don't think most people spend their lives there. I think most of the time they'll go there for a few years, maybe a decade. Then they'll go back to their home congregations and become elders or whatever else. So anyways, that's how the Watchtower Society makes their money, through a mix of donations from their members, having things deeded to them, stocks, bonds, wills, investments of various sorts, and exploiting the labor of their members by having them build kingdom halls and liquidating the old ones over and over again until they have what they need. So here's the main question. Are they solvent? Can they survive as they are without finding a new source of income? What's bankrupting them right now? Why are they having such serious financial issues? Here's the answer. They would be perfectly solvent if it weren't for the fact that they're paying out the nose for lawsuit after lawsuit after lawsuit. Candace Conti, Jose Lopez, and any number of other abuse cover-up cases and class action lawsuits. That's where their money's going. If they didn't have to deal with all these lawsuits, I imagine they'd be in much better shape than they are. And they're still racking up $4,000 a day in fines until they release the 23,000 names they're hiding. If you're interested, I put a link to a news article about that in the description. I think they'd be able to survive off of donations, investments, and property sales if it weren't for these lawsuits burying them at every turn. So we just need to keep it up. Can't let them get away with the human rights violations and flagrant disregard for ethics, morals, and law. Okay, that's all I've got for you. Follow me on Discord, Patreon, and all social media. And check out my science channel and my podcast. I just reached 1,000 subscribers on my podcast, so I'm pretty happy with that. I think I'm up past 6,000 on my science channel. And Discord has almost 4,500 members. Still building up my Facebook and Twitter, but I use all that stuff for communication with fans. So if you have something to tell me or you want to get a hold of me for some reason, then join my Discord and send me a message in the Ask Telltale channel. I currently respond to all of those messages. Okay, thanks for watching, guys.